Good morning, everyone. I am Mr. Live and I am your teacher. Today, you will learn about what is this Riemann sum. So, how do we measure a quantity? Example, yung tubig, paano natin ma-measure yung quantity niya? So, actually, what does it mean to measure something? Or more precisely, what are the ingredients needed to be able to measure something? So, ang kailangan lang natin, kung mag-measure tayo, kasi yung data natin is scale, it means meron talaga siyang unit. So, there must be one ingredient and that is a unit. Example, 2 cm. So, meaning, mas malaki yung 5 cm kaysa 2 cm kasi may unit niya. What if kung 2 cm versus 5 mm? So, they have different unit. That means you can compare two things with the same unit. So, hindi sila pwede na i-compare agad based on the quantity tapos magkaiba ang unit. So, there is one ingredient that we can measure something and that is a unit. Okay? So, the second ingredient is not so obvious. It is some kind of protocol. Ang protocol, for example, we define. Kasi ang protocol, ang ibig sabihin niyan, meron siyang standard, meron siyang definition. So, for example, a Sunday word meaning procedure or method. So, pag ang Sunday, nakadefine siya for procedure, that means we can say that Sunday stands for method. There is a protocol. Pag Thursday, what is the meaning? Pag sinabing Saturday, ano ang ibig sabihin? So, there is a protocol. Sa research kasi, so for example, may protocol yan. Hindi pwede na kung ang rat or yung mice na so for example, injikan mo agad siya ng pain reliever. Hindi pwede yon na injikan agad. So, there is a protocol to be followed. Hindi pwede rin yung mice, for example, na katayin agad. For example, mag-dissect kayo ng mga mice or yung mga rats or for example, iring or cat. So, may mga protocol yan na hindi masasaktan yung cat. So, of course, lagyan mo ng pain reliever before siya i-dissect. So, that is the protocol. Meron siyang sinusunod na batas or pamamaraan. So, that is the second ingredient that allows us to quantitatively measure the quantity we want to measure to the unit we have chosen. Say, for example, protection factors. For example, the SPF, the sun protection factor. Assay protocol ang tawag doon. Yung paano gagawin, yung paano mag-measure ng isang survey, paano mag-measure ng isang observation sa isang experiment. So, there quite a lot of protocols that are complex and ingenious. Suppose you want to measure a volume. So, for example, yung volume ang ating i-measure in mathematical way. So, ang kailangan lang natin is, kailangan natin ng unit. Kung ang unit natin ay centimeter, then we have 1 cubic centimeter. This is the 1 cubic centimeter. Where one side, itong side dito is 1 centimeter, this is 1 centimeter, and this is 1 centimeter. And that becomes 1 cubic centimeter, and this is a cube. So, that is the protocol. And here is the quantity whose volume we want to measure. So, for example, ito yung volume na measure natin, na nakita natin sa mall. Ito ang forma. So, paano natin i-measure ang volume niyan? Kasi kung ilalagay natin yung ice cubes, yung kanina, ilalagay natin, may mga space na maiiwan. So, may mga open space. So, paano natin masasabi na ito talaga ang volume using that unit? So, madali lang po. Alam natin that we can do that physically. It's easy. So, if the thing you want to measure is solid, then, anybody? Yes. Fill the glass to some mark. So, push the thing until submerged. Read a new mark. So, ang ginagawa, we have the water displacement. So, ang ginagawa doon is nilalagay ang tubig sa glass. Tapos, mini-measure ang glass. We know that 1 liter is equivalent to alam natin na 1 cubic decimeter ay is equal to 1 liter. So, 1 dm, 1 dm, 1 dm, that is, ang laman niyan at is 1 liter. That is the density of water, 1 cubic decimeter per liter. And, i-measure natin yung water doon sa measuring or graduated cylinder and then ipasok niya doon sa yung kanina, yung parang conical na curve. And then, after that, i-measure mo yung saan naabot yung water. So, for example, ang water ay nakaabot siya ng 1 cubic decimeter. That is 1 liter. So, ang volume nun is 1 cubic decimeter. That is 1 liter kung sa solid. So, that means solid to liquid, pwede natin siya i-relate. And that is, you want to measure. So, another way is the mathematical way. We will learn later how to replace it for a mathematical protocol. So, for example, that one, so ang tingin natin mathematically, that this is the cone. So, na-stretch na siya. Actually, yung volume doon sa taas, mag-equal talaga yan sa loob, but we have to add something. Hindi natin babawasan yung curve dyan, kundi dadagdagan natin. So, kung idadagdag natin, pa-straight siya dito, it means there is something na, example, idadirect yan siya, that means may mga ima-minus tayo dito. That is a mathematical way. And we would already have a protocol, namely formula. So, dapat meron tayong formula. Same thing for areas. So, for some kind of figures, we have a protocol. Alright, we have a formula that gives us a way to achieve a quantitative comparison between the figure and our unit of area, namely a square. So, for example, meron tayong square. So, we are simply going to devise a new protocol that will first is work for some figures that the old protocol was not able to handle. Katulad nung kanina, hindi natin siya directly makukuha yung volume. So, kung titingnan natin siya, kung i-get sa natong cone, that means we give the same answer as the old protocol for figures that the old protocol could handle. So, the second property is important. If our new protocol doesn't give pi r squared for the area of a circle of radius r, we would not accept it as a reasonable extension of the notion of area. Okay, the meaning of the word extension is that you have added something but kept everything old. So, i-remain pa rin natin yung dati, pero maidadagdag tayo para mas maintindihan natin. Okay? So, the new protocol we will devise is due to George Friedrich Bernhard Riemann and carries his name. This is the Riemann Sum. It works for some but not all because we have the Lebesgue protocol also. So, ito yung pagbabasihan natin yung Riemann protocol. Figures as defined that the xy is an element of the two-dimensional plane, yung Cartesian plane, where x is between a and b inclusive and y is from 0 to the range of f of x. So, of course, ang y natin, kasi ang y natin is equal to f of x, so it means kung titingnan natin, it is above the x-axis. That means it is in the first or the second quadrant lang ating titingnan. So, the f natin, yung function natin is mapped from the coordinates AB mapped to the r positive. That is positive real numbers. Let's call them nice. Why? Because in the real situation kasi, wala tayong negative. So, for example, volume, wala tayong negative. Pag sinasabing distance, wala tayong negative. Because we're referring to scalar quantity. Convince yourself that all the old figures for which you have a formula, rectangle, triangle, trapezoid, circle, are nice. Why? Because the area, the volume, the surface area are positive. Okay? Here is a nice one not included among the old ones. So, ito yon. Ano sa tingin nyo? Possible ba? Yes, this is almost but not quite a triangle. So, this is the method of Riemann. Paano na makuha ang area ng curve na ito? This is the f of x equals x squared or f of x equals x cubed. Kung titignan natin kung anong graph ito. So, una, here is the protocol that Riemann advised. The first is, we will divide the interval from A to B. So, nakita natin yung starting doon is from A, yung last doon is B. So, titingnan natin ulit. So, ito yon. We have here the starting point A and we have the last point of B. So, para daw maano natin ito, makuha natin yung area dito, that means, i-divide natin ito siya into triangles. So, i-divide natin. Okay. Kung ilang triangles gusto natin. So, for example, this is one triangle. Kung dalawang triangle ang ating titingnan, so, hatiin natin sa gitna. And then, mag-extend tayo ng segment dito because a triangle is bounded by segments. So, merong makukuha na. area. Then, note that each part has length b minus a over n. Bakit b minus a over n? Kasi ang length ng dito sa gilid is ang difference. For example, mag-start siya ng 1, mag-end siya 3. So, ang length niya ay 2. That is 3 minus 1. So, ima-minus natin siya, b minus a over n. And that is the number of, the length, of course, of our, sa base. In each of the n subintervals, choose one x point essentially at random. In each of the n subintervals, choose one x point essentially at random. Yung letter D, parang ano siya, pwede ba natin makakuha tayo ng x randomly? So, n subintervals, yes, magkakaroon yan, but that is, pag-studyohan natin yan. Letter C, for each of the n subintervals, compute the area of the rectangle's base is the subinterval and height the functional value at the x point chosen. So, makukuha natin yung area. Then, letter D, add up the areas of these rectangles. This is not easy. And take a limit as n goes to positive infinity. Bakit? As the number of triangles extended or goes to positive infinity, it becomes a curve. It becomes a curve. So we have remarks. Steps D and E will give this will give us trouble, but we'll actually find a way to sidestep them with a very powerful theorem. And step B, yung kinanin sinabi ko, yung mag-random tayo mag-select ng x, is a dream. It says we can pick any x in the subinterval. Sometimes we'll be asked to pick the left endpoint, sometimes the right one. Kung between A and B, or from A to B, or in between, or the figures, I will show pick the highest rectangle or the lowest or an average. Let me show you. So the first one is sum curve as before. Ito yon. So, as n goes to 8, so there are 8 rectangles. Or say, magkakaroon tayo ng mga triangle dyan. Or, in short, we have the rectangles. So, ito yung first rectangle, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. And we have the triangles here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So, ito yon. The difference of this rectangle, the area of this, plus the area of this is the area of the total plus the area of this one. So, the area below the curve, ito yung below the curve above the x-axis is the sum of these triangles and these rectangles. But this is difficult. Why? Because ito ay mahirap hanapin kung anong point ito. Ito, ano kaya ang length nito? Ano kaya ang length nito? Ano kaya ang length niyan? Para makuha ang 1/2 dh. At saka magkaiba ito, napakarami nito. So, for example, we have triangles. So, mas maganda kung wala na itong spaces na mga triangles. Mas maganda kung puro rectangle lang. So, to do that one, we have same n, but ito yung gagawin. How about this one? Meron pa rin siyang rectangle. Pwede din natin ganyanin. Ito ay mga rectangles. Ito ay mga triangle. Or this one. Saan ba kayo nagaganahan? This one could be equivalent to that. Or this one equivalent to that. And so on. So, mag-equate sa 0. And then this one. Say, for example, as n go positive infinity. So, for example, n is 22. Ayan. Kung makikita ninyo, as the number of rectangles increases, the number of this one decreases. So, yung difference ng area dito na included is mag-approach siya doon sa curve. So, therefore, as n goes to positive infinity, it means ito ay magiging puro rectangle. And then, this, dito sa taas ay magiging base na niya or kanyang side sa taas or the width or the length. Now, we must invent notations and algorithms for this Riemann protocol. It will come next. So, we need to name. The first is the n sub-intervals. Tradition requires that we name them thus. Yung intervals natin, yung first rectangle is change in x sub 1, change in x sub 2, change in x sub n. And then, itong rectangle na ito ay magkakaroon ng the same length. Bakit? Kung titingnan natin, we subdivide this. So, ang length dito ay pareho dito. Magkaiba lang sila ng width or ang height. So, it means, yung length niya is we say that is change in x, yung sa baba. And then the point we pick in each subinterval, there are n of them. So there are n of them subintervals, or there are n rectangles. And we have x sub 1, x sub 2, up to x sub n. Therefore, we can write that the area of each of n subrectangles is yung length times the height. So that means, yung height kasi is yung x sub 1, yun yung ating point. And that means yung end niya, yun yung ating f of x sub 1. Ito yung height niya. Ito yung kanyang length. Length times width, or ito yung width. Kasi magkaiba ang width, that means magkaiba ito. Ito ay pareho. So that is summation of x times f of x sub 1, change in x, f of x sub 2. These are the areas. So it means, kung babalikan natin itong ating rectangle, ang area dito is change in x times f of x sub 1. So for example, ito, ang ating area dito na rectangle is ang change in x dito, kasi pareha yun sila. And then this one dito, from that f of x, we can find random points here. That is f of x is this one. So for example, x sub n ito, that means x times f of x sub n. Kung titingnan natin to, ano ito kataas, kasi from 0 yan siya. So for example, that is 10, that means yung length times the 10 here. Okay? So that is how to find the area of the curve under the curve. The sum of the n areas, so i-add natin yan siya, and then makikita natin na constant yung change in x. Then we can factor change in x, f of x sub 1 plus f of x sub 2, and so on. Or more precisely, we can have summation of I sub equals 1 to n, where I starts from 1 to n. That is factorable change in x, and f of x sub I, where I starts from 1 hanggang sa n. So, i-multiply na natin, and that is change in x, summation of f of x sub I r starts from 1 to n. Thus, these are called the Riemann sums for the function f of x. Computing Riemann sums is a challenge you will face in exams. Let's do a couple. So, for example, we're going to verify that the Riemann protocol gives the expected answers of a rectangle and a triangle. So, ito yung rectangle natin. So, ito ang rectangle natin. Ang kanyang length ay A and B. So, kung gaano ito kataas, this is B minus A, and this one is K. So, that means ang area nito is B minus A times K, because length is B minus A times the height, or the width is K. So, titingnan natin. According sa sabi doon, titingnan natin ano ang f of x. Ang f of x natin is ang K, kasi yung pinakamataas niya doon is ang K. So, f of x is K, this one. Then, step number 2, yung change in x. Yung change in x natin is yung length ng rectangle. So, ang length ng rectangle, since isa lang, b minus a over n. Depende natin kung anong n natin. Kung i-divide natin siya into 3, so that is b minus a over 3. F of x sub I equals k no matter which x sub I you take. So, kahit saan, meron tayong f of x sub I. So, summation of I starts from 1 to n is change in x times f of x sub I. Alam natin ang change in x is equal to b minus a over n. Okay. And this one, I starts from 1 to n of k. And that means, alam natin na ang k dito ay i-add natin k sub 1, k, and so on. So, it means this is, so for example, 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2. Example, 4 na to. We multiply 2 times 4. So that means, if there are n times of k, that means this is n times k. So, n times k divided by n times b minus a, that means makakancel ang n, that is b minus a times k. And that is the proof that we have the same area with the formula of the Riemann sum. Riemann protocol gives the old answer. You do the triangle OAB in the figure, the base is A, the height is K, so you should get 1/2 AK. So, this one is ang ating, this is the length, AB, A, of course. This one is the height, K. So, we know that this is 1/2 AK, and let's try kung paano siya makuha ang kanyang Riemann sum area of this 1/2 AK using the Riemann sum. That is your activity.